So let's get started. Hey everybody, I'm going to go ahead and begin today's presentation. So thanks for joining me. We're going to go ahead and start with our presentation for today. Here we go. Design through time. So here's our table of contents, basically what we're going to be doing today. This week we will analyze 2 additional ages in our design through time unit, which is going to be the ISTE standards. Okay, this is not a table of contents. I can't pretend like it is. Overview. Here we go. Let's go. Take 2. Hey everybody, let's get cranking for our assignment for today. All right, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome. Let's get started. Unit 4, Design Through Time. Our overview. Our objective is this. This week we will analyze 2 additional ages in our Design Through Time unit, okay? Students, you guys are going to build knowledge by actively exploring real-world issues and problems, developing ideas and theories, and pursuing answers and also solutions. Okay, so let's talk about.
Hey, and welcome back to Heimler's History. In these last few videos, we've been talking about how the Industrial Revolution began and how it spread. We've been saying that the Industrial Revolution was a massive change in world history, and no small part of that change was the technology that made it possible. And so in this video, we're going to be talking about technology in the Industrial Age. Let's get to it. Now let me begin by telling you that there are in fact 2 industrial revolutions, and roughly they're distinguished 2 ways. The first, they're distinguished by time periods. The first one happened first and the second one happened second. And second, they're distinguished by the kind of technology that characterized each period. And I'm kind of in the mood to look at both. So the first industrial revolution took place roughly from the mid-18th century to the mid-19th century. And the major player in terms of technology in the first industrial revolution was the steam engine invented by our good buddy James Watt. So in a previous video, I mentioned that coal was the chief natural resource that got the industrial revolution going. In this video, I'm going to tell you why. So James Watt discovered that if you burn coal, then you could heat up water. And if you got that water hot enough, it would produce steam. And if you put that steam under pressure in an engine, that it can push a piston, which could then turn a wheel. That's probably like the worst explanation of the physics of the steam engine, but I mean, you get it, right? Coal, hot, steam, turn stuff. Now, why was that such a big deal? Well, do you remember what I told you in a previous video about the birth of the factory system? Well, if you don't, then let me tell you now. The factory system was born out of the power of the water frame. You stuck a wheel in the water turned it, and your factory made stuff. But think about that for a second. If your factory depends on running water, then that means that there's only so many places that you can actually build a factory. But now, if you got yourself a steam engine and a buttload of coal, then you can build a factory anywhere you want it. It was a huge innovation that led to factories being built all over the place. But the steam engine didn't only revolutionize the factory, it also had a big effect on transportation as well. Example number 1, ships. As you may remember, up till this time, ships are powered by wind blowing into sails. But if you stick a steam engine on a ship, then it doesn't matter if the wind is blowing from this direction or that direction. You can go wherever you want because you don't need the wind anymore. This had a big effect on trade. Rivers had long been used by merchants as one of the most efficient means to move goods to different places. But the problem is, rivers only flow in one direction, so you either had to row back upstream, which was very inefficient, or tow it back upstream from the shore. So pop a steam engine on a trade ship, and now you can float that puppy downstream and then chug your way right back up. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And so as a result of steamships, trade in all industrialized nations increased. Example number 2, locomotives. Lay some railroad tracks, shove a steam engine in a locomotive, and that thing could pull crazy amounts of goods back and forth across a landmass. And again, this had some major effects. In Russia, the completion of the Trans-Siberian Railroad meant a flourishing trade with eastern states like China. And in the United States, the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad meant a big boom in trade across the country, and it facilitated significant migrations of people from the east to the west and vice versa. Okay, so those are some of the greatest technological hits from the first industrial revolution. Now let's turn our attention and look to the second industrial revolution, which basically occurred from the mid-19th century to the early 20th century. Now the major players in the second industrial revolution were the United States, Great Britain, and Germany. So whereas the first industrial revolution majored in steam power, iron, and textiles, the second industrial revolution majored in steel, gas power, and communication. And now let's look at each of those in turn. First, steel. It was during this time that we see the rise of the mass production of steel, which was much stronger than iron. Steel became the building block of the Industrial Revolution because a new process for refining it was introduced. It was called the Bessemer Process, and without getting into the technicalities of it, because let's be honest, I'm a history teacher, when we start talking about the physics of things, I'm at the very end of my mental capacities. The process was basically this. You blast hot iron with air, and that gets rid of all the impurities, and then you get steel. Anyway, the process of it doesn't matter. What matters is that the Bessemer process during this time gave people the ability to make mass quantities of steel. All right, now let's look at gas power, which was the byproduct of oil. And by the mid-1800s, oil wells were being drilled all over the dang place. Once the raw oil was in hand, then it could be refined and separated into kerosene and gasoline. Kerosene was used widely as a way to power lamps in people's homes, but it was gasoline that took over as the main benefit of oil extraction. The internal combustion engine was developed in the late 19th century, and it was similar to the steam engine in that it used pistons to turn cranks, but instead of being powered by steam, ignited gasoline pushed the pistons. Also in the Second Industrial Revolution, there was a revolution in communication. And the reason why is because there were some major developments during this period in the harnessing of electricity. And one of the applications of this harnessed electricity was the telegraph. This little gadget was invented by Samuel Morse in 1837, and basically was capable of sending pulses of electricity in a combination of long and short bursts along electrical wires at great distance. Building on this idea, in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, which didn't just transmit bursts of electricity, but actual voices of actual human beings. Now let's stop there and mention a few of the major consequences of the advent of all of this new technology in both industrial revolutions. One major consequence was the increase of trade. With new means of transportation, first with the steam engine and then with the internal combustion engine, manufactured goods can now be shipped to distant markets far more efficiently. A second consequence of all of this is new waves of migration. Not only was it easier to travel to new parts of the globe, but once you got there, it was easier to communicate with your family members that you left back home. Because that was true, it was much easier to conceive of moving to places far off from your larger family, and that's going to have social consequences.
All right, I felt like the question was going to come up, Ms. Pierce, is this history or is this technology, right? I'm confused. So remember, technology, the definition of that is the way that we interact with our world around us, right? So think about this. If these things were not created or invented, how would our life be? It would be completely different. So let's take a look as we continue on with the industrial age. And this time we're going across the pond to London.
We're in the Information Age Gallery at the Science Museum in London. This gallery looks at the last 200 years of information and communication technologies. But it doesn't just take a technological approach, it actually looks at the social and economic changes that have happened to us with these amazing new technologies. Behind me is the rugby tuning coil. This incredible, awe-inspiring object represents all of the cables and networks that span our globe today. It was used to send out signals from rugby radio station, which had a call sign of GBR. This radio station could send messages right the way across the world because it used very low frequency signals, and they can actually curve right the way around the earth while sending very small amounts of information through things like Morse code. I love this object because it looks like a vast spider's web of cables and wood. And to me, it really just represents this incredible change that's happened in our communication technologies. This gallery is broken up into 6 sections. In this film, I'm just going to talk about 6 stories, one for each network. One of the most important moments in the birth of the electric telegraph in the 19th century was the creation of the first transatlantic telegraph cable. In 1858, signals were sent between Valentia in Ireland and Newfoundland in Canada for the very first time. These were incredibly weak signals. They had to travel a long way through cables. And so a new type of instrument was developed, something called a mirror galvanometer. William Thomson, otherwise known as Lord Kelvin, was the scientist who created this instrument. And he used this to receive these very, very small signals as they came across the Atlantic. Imagine the celebrations when Britain and America could send messages almost instantly for the first time. President Buchanan sent Queen Victoria a message and everybody celebrated. But celebrations only lasted for a short time because a few weeks later, the cable failed and they had to start again. And it wasn't until 1865 that a permanent connection between Britain and America was established. On a foggy morning in 1922, this machine behind me was used to send out the first radio signals for the BBC. Known as 2LO, it sent radio signals to London and represents the birth of state broadcasting in Britain. The object is gorgeous to look at. It has these enormous glass valves that were used to amplify the signal, and this stop button that if it all went horribly wrong, you could stamp on to close the machine down. To me, I just love the idea that it's all home built and homemade. It really shows the thinking of the engineers as they used this transmitter to send out messages from Savoy Hill in the Strand in London.
2LO, Marconi House, London, calling. 2LO, Marconi House, London, calling.
From this point, just a few radio enthusiasts were receiving the signals, but it didn't take long for the whole of Britain to access the BBC.
So I think this is fascinating because right now, think about where we are in this day and age, in this time, right? This is just the beginning of the telephone, okay? If you didn't catch that. They're literally sending information from Britain all the way over to America. So think about how long that is. It's pretty far, right? So this is the first stages of this happening, guys. So this is like the beginning of the information age, which is right at the end of the Industrial Revolution, which is why both of those kind of talk about the telegraph. So let's keep going.
It's amazing to think that by 1953, the Queen's coronation was being broadcast to millions of people watching televisions at home. And today we have digital television on demand when we want it.
Where would we be without our on demand? Okay.
In the exchange, one of the stories we tell about the telephone is the creation of the first transatlantic telephone cable, the TAC-1. The TAC-1 was laid between Oban in Scotland and Nova Scotia in Canada, and it used a series of repeaters or amplifiers to send the signal. What we're standing in front of here is one of the rigid repeaters that was used right at the bottom of the sea. And in 1957, the black activist and singer Paul Robeson gave a concert live between New York and London.
Hello, Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, wonderful.
Will it come up all right?
Oh, I can't tell you.
That's wonderful. Hello.
And the crowds were delighted. They raised money to pay for the phone line during the concert, and Paul Robeson's voice could be heard.
Old man river, that old man river, he must know something, but don't say nothing.
He was able to do this because the TAC-1 allowed high quality sounds and was also very inexpensive. The constellation looks at the satellites that are currently orbiting our Earth to make our connected lives possible. Behind me is the Eurostar 3000 satellite, a real satellite that has a sister currently orbiting the Earth to send telephone messages, internet and television messages across the world. We tell lots of different stories about satellite communications. In the web section, we look at the birth of computer networks, and perhaps the most familiar network to all of us today is the World Wide Web. Behind me is the object that Sir Tim Berners-Lee used to create the first ever web pages. In 1989, he created a document, something rather boringly called Information Management, a Proposal. And he sent this to his boss, Mike Sendall. Mike Sendall looked at it and wrote at the top, vague but exciting. And from that, the World Wide Web was born. They bought this computer, the next, and Tim used it to design the very first fledgling web pages and to host a website. You can actually see on the computer, it says, this machine is a server, do not power it down. And so if you turned off this computer, you would have been turning off the World Wide Web, something that is absolutely inconceivable to us today. In Cameroon, they hadn't enjoyed the same kind of landline infrastructure that we had in the West. And in 1997, the telecommunications market was liberalised, which meant that lots of new companies could be set up. The owner of this call box would have a mobile phone and would allow people to pay for a small amount to use a phone to make a call or to receive a call. This was because mobile phones at this time were still really expensive. Only a few years later, the mobile phone became so cheap that many people could hope to own their own. And today in Cameroon, the majority of the population will have a phone in their pocket. When I was creating the gallery, the thing I really wanted to do was look at the experience of change from each of these new technologies. So we think that we're living in this incredible modern age with the internet and mobile phones, but what we discovered is the experience of our predecessors was very similar, and they were just as inspired by their new technologies when it happened to them. This is a new world where the network is there for everyone.
Hey guys, so thanks for joining me for that. So if you see, there's a lot of new information in that, and some of that we already knew, but it's just really, I like it because it highlights some specific things that are happening right now in the information age that we live in today. All right, so now let's talk about where that takes us today. Let's go on to the next activity, which is going to be your exit ticket. All right, so once you click on this, you're going to need to go ahead and fill this out. So, hi students. Today you will review 3 new technologies invented to help people during the COVID-19 pandemic. You'll be analyzing these current technologies as it is the first part of the design cycle. Then you'll begin to plan your own new designs. All right. Now, your email address will be recorded when you submit this form, so make sure that your email address is ready to go. If you want, you can go ahead and go to your Google Classroom at this time, and you can pause this video if you like. Go to your Google Classroom, pull this up, and I'll walk through it with you, okay? So go ahead and type in your name and then your section number. All right, now let's go. Starship Delivery. Cities across the U.S. have started using robots for safe, contactless delivery of food orders and groceries to protect the high-risk and elderly while keeping their local businesses running. To help keep local food businesses as businesses started adhering to social distancing, they became at risk for going out of business. City governments sped up their approval of autonomous robots and partnered with Starship Technology. Jeez, guys, this is amazing. The robots carry 20 pounds of groceries and use sensors and artificial intelligence to navigate. Upon return, the robots can be easily disinfected. When COVID-19 hit and all of our local businesses in the city of Fairfax were required to start enforcing social distancing rules and regulations, or just close altogether, we were thinking of ways that we could really help the business community, says Chris Bruno, Economic Development for the City of Fairfax. Robots help communities weather the pandemic by reducing human exposure to the coronavirus and allowing businesses to provide food to those staying home. So here's an image of it. I'm kind of watching it the whole time. It's a little distracting. Okay, so take a look at that. Isn't that cool? All right, let's go to the next 2 questions. Would this technology be useful to you and your family? Go ahead and type yes or no, and then tell me what potential problems you think could exist from this technology. So remember, if you need to pause, go ahead and pause. You can go ahead and type in your answer inside a Google Classroom. I'm going to keep rolling through the next thing. Here we go. Now, a robot called Atoms UV is decluttering high-risk areas for janitors and cleaners. There are several disinfecting robots on the market. However, many of them cannot move objects aside to ensure thorough cleaning. Atoms UV is creating safer environments for janitors to perform their work. people remotely control agile, dexterous, autonomous mobile manipulation system, UV. It uses a UV light wand to disinfect and a gripper to open doors and handle objects to sanitize hard-to-reach spaces carefully. The controller uses the robot's cameras to navigate while it creates a 3D model of the area from gathered data. We are building a robotic platform to improve human productivity, reduce risk to workers, and ensure that the disinfection process is thorough. Robots like this will help to promote safer cleaning practices in areas that might hold surfaces with the coronavirus. Therefore, janitors could spend less time in these risky areas. It looks just like an arm. Look at this picture, y'all. Wow. So then tell me, would this technology be useful to you? Okay, and then tell me what potential problems you think could exist from this particular technology. And let's go. So this one says required. So we're going to click whatever you think. I'm just going to click maybe. Y'all click whatever you think is helpful, or maybe yes. All right, let's go. All right, next. Drones are delivering COVID-19 test samples in Ghana. Drones are delivering COVID-19 test samples from rural Ghana. It is challenging for the government of Ghana to track the spread of coronavirus in rural parts of the country. This delivery service will help the government provide assistance to these healthcare facilities. In just 4 flights, the drones delivered 51 test samples to the Memorial Institute for Medical Research in Accra, the capital of Ghana. These will be the first drones to be part of daily operations, making long-range deliveries into urban areas on behalf of distant patients. Using contactless drone delivery to transport COVID-19 test samples will allow the government to respond to the pandemic and help save lives more quickly. Autonomous drones are a useful way for medical facilities to give and receive vital medical supplies and texts. With these drones, communities in need will have access to fast, life-saving systems. Okay. So let's take a look. Look at that. I know it looks like a plane. It is a plane, but it's a drone. Okay. And it's pretty cool. So, how do you think that people in Ghana have benefited from this technology? Go ahead and type your answer in there, okay? Let's go. Finally, it's your turn. If you had to design technology to assist people, what need would you be addressing? So think about it. Right now, we live in a time where there's a lot of need, right? What technology would you create, okay? What need would you be trying to fulfill or to address? So go ahead and type that in right now at this time. Okay, and when you're done with that, move on to the next one. Describe your idea that will help others in no less than 3 sentences. I don't mind if you want to go into detail and describe and write out your whole thing, but it has to be at least 3 sentences. Okay, guys? So when you are finished, you're going to go ahead and hit submit. If you skip these answers, it won't let you, right? It's going to say it's required. So you're going to need to put in your answers. So if it says, I don't know, right? I'm going to say that's not long enough, right? So you want to make sure you give your answer a nice complete sentence. And if you say, something like that here as well, not gonna work there either, right? So you have to make sure that you really fully take a look at the answers, complete it, okay? So if you want a copy of your assignment, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, go ahead and click on this because you do want a copy of it. So click over where it says send me a copy of my responses. Go ahead and get that done. Once you are finished, go ahead and hit submit. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in for today's lesson. I will have your assignment completed for you. As long as you make sure that you go ahead and hit submit, I can give you credit. And also go and check in inside of Google Classroom for today. Don't forget to check in. Guys, have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. And remember to stay safe, okay? Bye.